It was 45-40 Alabama pulling off an onside kick and a kick return all the way for a touchdown to pull one out in the fourth quarter against Clemson. Now the rematch, 2016's national championship game, the first week of 2017. We bring in Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC to help us break it down. Mike, here we go, trying to figure out who's going to win this game. Let's start with the Clemson offense, and it all starts with number 4, Deshaun Watson. And one of the big reasons that Clemson was able to make this a game and really outplay Alabama for large stretches of this matchup last year was because he, unlike probably any other player in the country, hung almost 500 yards up against this defense.
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun Watson is kind of what you start with. Obviously, throwing for 4,000 yards, 38 touchdowns on the year. It was interesting because Deshaun Watson himself kind of said, start of the year, yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm pressing a little bit, and that's a reason why we're struggling. I need to play better, and the pressure is getting to me. I think it kind of takes a lot for a quarterback to come out and say that when you're as good at what you're doing as Deshaun Watson is. But they've had another really, really productive year. Watson's played really well. Wayne Gallman actually had a worse year this year than he did last year, but you wouldn't have known it. 1,000 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns. Clemson's offense, especially later in the year, once they got rolling, you felt really good about where they were at. The one other thing about the Tigers is that when you watch them play, you look at that defense and you're thinking, okay, you lost a bunch of really good starters to the NFL, after last year's national championship finish. And you come back with really a lot of guys that, had been recruited very highly, but hadn't really played a ton yet. And you basically fill out the same defense essentially as you did last year when the same thing happened. I mean, Dabo Swinney's got this great coaching staff that's going out and getting all these recruits defensively. And while they're turning out pros each and every year, they're able to really replace and not miss a beat on that side of the ball. And I think that's been huge, especially down the stretch when Clemson's played better opponents. So you look at the Tigers. Obviously, you struggle a little bit through non-conference play. You win the games, but you don't really look yourself. And then, you get to the bigger games of the year. You play a Louisville, you play a Florida State. Then you get to Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game. And then what they just did to Ohio State, 31-0 in the Fiesta Bowl. This is a really, really good Clemson team that, when playing at their best, is as good as any team in the country. And I think a lot of people expected Clemson to be in this position to go out and compete for a national championship and play against a team like Alabama, who everybody thought would be the favorite to win this whole thing this year. To Clemson away to event, they were able to ultimately succeed and get to this point in the season where, you're really comfortable where they're at both offensively and defensively. And you're all of a sudden thinking, okay, Clemson might have a shot against 14-0 Alabama here in the national championship. So let's tee it up and let's get ready to go.
Has Clemson played, though, the type of game start to finish a number of times that they would need to play against the likes of an Alabama, meaning that you're right, they've had the uneven season, but most of that was early on. It was the Troy game, it was the NC State game where if the Wolfpack convert the field goal, it's over, and Clemson's got a second loss. It's, of course, the Pitt game because they lost it. The Virginia Tech offensive performance by the Tigers, I think, is in a category that they would need to achieve against Alabama, but the defense looked shaky against Gerard Evans and company. But then they come out against Ohio State, and I don't know if that's the best barometer because that was about half Ohio State struggling and half Clemson dominance along the defensive front. But Alabama seems to have played dominant football for the most part outside of an Ole Miss game that was early in the season, pretty much start to finish. Well, Clemson, as you mentioned, I'll hang on to that one comment, at their best plays Alabama neck and neck, but they have to be at their best. Alabama can just, you would think, be Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. That was the one thing when we're watching Clemson play. It's like, okay, defense showed up this week. Where's the offense at? Oh, offense showed up this week. Where's the defense at? I think the Ohio State game in the Fiesta Bowl is the closest we've gotten to see the complete Clemson team, and I think they have to be even better to give themselves an opportunity in the national championship against Alabama, because you're right. Alabama's been strong all season long. I mean, outside of that Ole Miss game, but like you mentioned, early in the year, was that late September, early October game? It's a game in which Alabama found a way to win, pulled away late, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, Alabama's looked really good all year. Jalen Hurts broken into the offense. Lane Kiffin, before all this weird stuff goes down, and he's now off to his job at FAU, and Steve Sarkisian's in for national championships. That's the wild card in this whole thing. It's, what's the Alabama offense going to look like? Is it going to look exactly the same? Are the play calling tendencies going to be a little bit different? That's the one thing we don't really know about heading into this game. But to your point, I mean, Jalen Hurts has been spectacular as a freshman, throws for nearly 2,700 yards, but he's really been more of a threat with his feet. He's an elite runner. And look, Clemson in this game, the issue they're going to have stopping Alabama is against the run. If they can shut down the running game of the Crimson Tide, Clemson's going to give themselves an excellent opportunity to win. And that goes with, Bo Scarborough at running back or Jalen Hurts just keeping him in the pocket. Clemson needs to try to stop the run in this game. I think if they do that, they shut down Bo Scarborough and they take away Jalen Hurts' ability to get outside of the pocket and run with the football, they're going to give themselves a great opportunity. I think the Tigers' best chance to win this game is making Alabama throw. I think ideally the Brett Venables defense is going to sit there and want to say, okay, let's have a freshman quarterback as good as Jalen Hurts is. Let's have him try to beat us. If he can beat us in the national championship, more power to him, but we're not going to lose to the Alabama running game that really just sucks the life out of you as the game goes on. If you shut that down early on, I think Clemson's going to have an opportunity here in this game.
And there's so many more reasons to play that card than just, okay, Scarborough's more of a definite than Jalen Hurts trying to dissect the defense going downfield. It also saves your defense wear and tear in the fourth quarter if you're able to stop the run and then force Hurts to give you more pass attempts and obviously take that physical beating off of your defense. It also it stops the clock on more occasions to give your offense the football rather than seeing Alabama just grind out 80-yard drives and chew up 6 and 7 minutes off the clock while Deshaun Watson's standing on the sideline. So I think that's key in terms of the pass-run ratio for Alabama for a number of reasons, to keep number 4 on the sideline and have that factor of beating down the defense that Alabama is so accustomed to doing in the fourth quarter, because Washington, even with an anemic offensive showing, was within 10 points, and that's with a pick 6 thrown in there, of staying with Alabama, because they continually, even with horrible field position, the Washington defense kept marching out onto the field inside their own territory and shutting down Alabama and keeping that game close. Now, if Deshaun Watson's running the show continually inside the 50, then it's probably a different ball game, regardless of how good the Bama defense is.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that's what we thought heading into the game last year is more of the same. We were saying, hey, these defenses really need to show up and play well against these two elite offenses, because Alabama's offense last year, however you want to slice it, I mean, Jake Coker had a great year, but running the football, they were elite. And when you have a Derrick Henry in the backfield, that's what you're going to kind of hang your hat on. That's what Alabama did, but they struggled to keep Deshaun Watson off the field last year, and everybody will remember it ultimately took the onside kick for Alabama to swing the momentum to win them the national championship. Clemson was out there trying to win that game. They were up multiple times. It was back and forth the entire game and high scoring. Yeah, Alabama doesn't want to get into a high scoring game with Clemson because, as good as Alabama has been this year, a lot of the burden has been put on the defense. Now, the offense has been more than capable, even above average, and Jalen Hurts has been really good, but I think you're more confident last year in Alabama's offense to keep up with Clemson than you are this year, even though Alabama does have some receivers that can hurt you. Obviously, O.J. Howard killed Clemson in the title game last year. Clemson will be ready in game planning for him. But, yeah, the Tigers don't want to get into – Alabama doesn't want to get into a high-scoring game with Clemson here, because that'll turn out poorly for them this year if I had to guess.
Mike, you mentioned the term wild card a few minutes ago pertaining to Lane Kiffin and the transition to Steve Sarkisian. I don't think there's going to be a change in the system, obviously. The system's in place. It's well known. But just having a different person communicating the play calls and the different voice, and just the oddity of all of a sudden, after 2 full seasons of Lane, 3 full seasons of Kiffin at the controls, all of a sudden it's a Sarkisian communicating to the offense and to Jalen Hurts in particular. The wild card for me on the Clemson side, when I typically think wild card, I think of an unknown factor, something that could go either way. But I'm going to throw out the wild card factor as Mike Williams, not because we don't know that he's one of the best wide receivers in the country. It's because we don't know what the impact could have been last year on the Alabama defense, because this Clemson offense is so dynamic and so versatile with Mike Williams in the lineup. So they had a very deep and very good receiving core without him. So they had plenty of numbers, but they had similar players that were limited getting downfield. Of course, Hunter Renfrow is a different sort. He's a Welker type that gave Alabama fits. But now they've got the guy that can blow the top off the defense and stretch it. And no, he's not going to catch passes most likely for 200 yards, but maybe 3 deep shots to Mike Williams. And just the threat of that opening things up underneath could be huge.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the first wild card for Alabama, the Steve Sarkisian point. I agree with you. I mean, the system's obviously going to be the same. They're going to try to hang their hat on running the football like they always do. It's just going to be play calling tendencies, I think, is what we're going to have to watch, or the play calling tendencies of Steve Sarkisian, similar to that of Lane Kiffin and what Lane Kiffin's done specifically with Jalen Hurts all year long. I think that's what you're going to want to watch for in this game. Is it more of a run-pass mix? Is it run first? We know Lane Kiffin loved Jalen Hurts' running ability, and that's a big reason why he won the starting quarterback job as a true freshman. You very rarely see that at Alabama where a freshman's taking the reins at quarterback. But, they believed enough in him, and a big reason why is because of the play calling of Lane Kiffin and how he thought that Jalen Hurts could run this offense. Mike Williams is a wild card, of course, because he's the deep threat down the field that you mentioned. The reason why Clemson had all sorts of issues with Hunter Renfrow last year, or why Alabama, had all sorts of issues with Hunter Renfrow last year, because they didn't know really how to account for him in the slot. He caught that one wild touchdown in the corner of the end zone that really got Clemson rolling in that game, if you remember correctly. And you look at what the Mike Williams addition could do to this offense in the national championship. Alabama now has to focus on stretching on Clemson, trying to stretch the field on him. And that's something that Clemson couldn't do in last year's national championship, of course. It opens up things for Artavis Scott as well. Artavis Scott has been big in the bubble screen game. That's how Clemson loves to use him. The quick hitting passing game is where Artavis Scott and Hunter Renfrow come in. But I think Mike Williams' deep threat is definitely something that Alabama is going to have to watch for in this game.
And with all this attention and focus we've given to both offenses and defenses against each other, the two biggest plays of the game in terms of turning the tide, pardon the pun, against Clemson in Alabama's favor, obviously, were special teams in the fourth quarter last year. Was the onside kick call by Nick Saban that was executed perfectly. And then, of course, Kenyon Drake brought back the kickoff return all the way for a touchdown in the fourth quarter that didn't necessarily seal the deal, but made it extremely difficult for Clemson to come back and made it a 2-score game. So special teams, I know Clemson, the metrics said last year that they were far behind Alabama. Alabama was very tight on special teams, and it proved out Clemson not so much. Clemson and Dabo Swinney and his staff have taken some attention and detail to the special teams. The metrics weigh out much better for Clemson in the matchup and the comparable statistics against Alabama this year, although Clemson gave up some yardage plays to Ohio State in the return game last week.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson is going to be in this position now like they were last year, where special teams do matter in a game of this magnitude when two teams are so incredibly close, talent and skill-wise. And Dabo Swinney in the offseason put together a disc of plays, essentially a whole script, and he called it Clemson Don't Beat Clemson. And they were just plays from the national championship where Clemson had control of a play, but they had a couple blown assignments that they usually hit on that end up costing them. And specifically, the Kenyon Drake touchdown on the return was in that playlist. And Clemson, to your point, has given special attention to the special teams for that reason, because they don't want to be in a position this year where they lose the game on special teams. Alabama is so well versed in all three phases of the game. Yeah, Saban never takes any chances. I mean, he gives great attention to all three phases of the game. And you look at Clemson, not that Dabo Swinney has ever not given attention to one major phase. There's a reason why Clemson is as good as they are. But I think special attention, especially when you're facing a team like Alabama, who's extremely dangerous on punt and kick returns. You're not going to let a play like that beat you this year if you're Clemson, at least not if Dabo Swinney is going to help it.
Conventional thinking is that it's not going to reach an 85-point total between the two teams this year. Alabama extremely strong on defense, and they were, of course, last year. But the speed from the pass rush is even more devastating from Alabama this year. And if you look at the point totals and the yardage numbers from their opponents coming down the stretch, Alabama's been devastating and took a pretty decent Washington offense and shut them down after the second drive of the game. Clemson playing well on both sides of the ball, obviously, in recent weeks, in particular against Ohio State. All right, Mike, I'm going to take every advantage of every minute and second to think about this one and take myself all the way to like Monday afternoon to make a prediction. But for you, I think you've got a call on this one.
Yeah, I do. But if you reach me again before Monday night, I'll probably change it 3 or 4 more times before then. Initially, I was in the traditional school of thought like everybody else. You look at Alabama, they're 13-0, right? They're going for their 14th straight win on the year. They haven't lost in like a year and a half. Their defense, as dominant as it was last year, is every bit as dominant this year, and they have a better playmaker at quarterback. But by the same token, Clemson's offense is better than it was last year when hitting on all cylinders. The defense is every bit as good, and I do think this will be low scoring. But with that being said, I think Clemson is going to find a way to stop the run in this game. And because of that, I think they are – God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Clemson is going to win the national championship 23-20 over Nick Saban and Alabama, but I do not feel good about it.
There you have it. Book your flight to Vegas. Mark it down. Clemson wins 23-20 right straight.
Don't do that.
From Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC. Mike, it's always a good time talking football, and obviously this is the culmination of all that hard work for the players and a lot of talking out of us for the last 15 or 16 weeks, breaking down college football start to finish. But we'll be back with tons of recruiting and off-season analysis of personnel as well. So appreciate the time.
All right. It's never an off season for us, Mark. Thanks.